a sequel to one of the most popular films of all time, a movie that won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. I mean, what could go wrong? Hmm. Let's talk about Hannibal. Living in exile, Dr. Hannibal Lecter tries to reconnect with now disgraced FBI agent Clarice Starling and finds himself a target for revenge from a powerful victim. The movie stars Anthony Hopkins, Julianne Moore, Gary Oldman, Ray Liotta, and Giancarlo Giannini. This movie's getting up there in age. In fact, yesterday, as of the time of this recording, yesterday was the initial premiere for Hannibal. So, yeah, it's been a while, but needless to say, I am going to be going into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, there's your warning. Up to this point, this is Ridley Scott's first sequel, which is kind of amazing to think about. But yeah, he wanted to work on this movie basically because he wanted to work with Anthony Hopkins, and that the book that this movie is based on was so good. He apparently read it in 4 sittings, like less than a week. He just devoured it. I also suspect that there was probably some bit of a challenge there. You know, I mean, he's sitting there reading this and he's going, "How the heck are we going to do this on film?" That's probably pretty exciting to a guy like Ridley. Now let's talk about the actors first and foremost. Of course, Anthony Hopkins is amazing as Hannibal Lecter. There's really no question that he was the right man for the part. But in this case, he was very hesitant, you know, because he didn't know if he wanted to go back. He won an Oscar playing him the first time. Wasn't sure if that was going to be a thing. But you know, it's you know, money talks, right? And the clamoring for another story in this universe that Thomas Harris created, yeah, of course. I mean, that's definitely something he wanted to do, and he did end up doing it, even though the director, the screenwriter, and his acting counterpart, Jodie Foster, decided not to come back, but he came back anyway. Now, when Jodie Foster declined to come back, there was, of course, a lot of actresses in Hollywood wanted to play this part. Julianne Moore is the one that ended up playing Clarice Starling, and the weird thing here with her performance isn't that it's bad. It's that there's not enough of it, and so much of her screen time is just it's her reacting to things. So it's unfortunate because I think what made Silence of the Lambs so good is that you spent time with the character and you got to understand the character. And this movie just doesn't allow her to have that same depth that the character had in Silence of the Lambs. So it's kind of a bummer. But I can't really fault her performance. I think she was fine in it. I just don't think that her character was allowed to breathe. Now, Gary Oldman as Mason Verger is absolutely unrecognizable, of course, due to the story of this character that I won't really go into. But he's chewing the scenery here, and he's as great as Gary Oldman ever was and is and ever will be. I mean, he's just great in this role, and I really had a lot of fun watching him. Movie also stars Ray Liotta in a performance that I was sort of taken aback by. I mean, I'd seen this movie, you know, way back when it came out. But yeah, I didn't really remember a whole lot of it. So seeing it again was actually kind of cool. But Ray Liotta was actually really good in this small part that he had. And man, yeah, it's his character goes through a lot in this movie. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, what's funny is that he actually got the job because he ran into Ridley Scott repeatedly at the gym and was like, "Hey man, you got a part for me or what?" And I just think that's kind of awesome. I mean, it's just kind of the way things work. Pretty cool. Giancarlo Giannini, this is the first and I think only movie that I've ever seen with him, but he's fantastic as Inspector Pazzi. I mean, he's really, really, really good. And I enjoyed watching his performance quite a bit. Now, Hans Zimmer's score here isn't like your typical bombastic Hans Zimmer score. Like when you think of Hans Zimmer, you think of like a certain thing. But I really enjoyed his score here. Now, you're not going to hum any themes from this movie. At least I didn't really connect on that level with any of them. But it is absolutely beautifully done. It's majestic, and it's gorgeous. Actually, it's a really, really nice score. Now, when we're talking about directing here, I mean, that's really what we're here for, right? Ridley. It's the Ridley Scott Review-a-thon, right? As per usual, the set design is absolutely impeccable. I mean, Ridley's attention to detail, the way things are set, the way things are framed, everything is beautiful. There are times when a scene is just like a normal kind of scene. You know what I mean? Like it's a lesser director would have shot it in a very simplistic way, and it would have been like this. No, it's not enough for Ridley. Ridley does these sweeping shots, these amazing shots that I really love watching him work as a director, and the way that he moves the camera, the way that everything works. It's beautiful stuff. Now, there's a scene in the movie that after Inspector Pazzi has realized that there's a reward for any information leading to the, I guess, apprehension of Hannibal Lecter, he gets this pickpocket to try and get some fingerprints on a bracelet. And the way that this scene is shot, the way that everything, the way it works, it's just beautifully done. And it's one of those where I'm like, I don't know if in 100 years, if I could have directed a scene like that and come up with the same sort of beautiful shots and very quickly letting you know what's happening and what the characters are thinking. Beautiful stuff. Toward the end of the movie, there's a scene at Union Station, and I just thought it was kind of interesting, especially the way that the scene started, because it started exactly the way almost the same framing as the way that he did it in Blade Runner, almost 20 years prior. So it was kind of cool to see Union Station back in a Ridley Scott movie. Now, over the years, this movie hasn't been, it's been kind of forgotten. 39% on Rotten Tomatoes isn't a great score, but it's one of those weird sort of things when looking at it. You know, it was an $87 million budget, and it made $351.7 million worldwide. That's a success. That's definitely a return on the investment. So yeah, it's strange how some of these movies just they tend to be successful, even though we look at them and we go, yeah, that was a little bit of a misstep. Now let's talk a little bit about the problems with this movie, and I think the biggest problem with the movie is the story. You know, the story is a little unfocused. Hannibal is clearly the protagonist of this movie, and Clarice Starling is basically been shuffled back to the background, and that's kind of a big problem, especially for those of us who really enjoyed Silence of the Lambs because of the interplay between those two characters. We don't get it until way late in the movie, and that's just kind of a bummer. And I mean, again, that's part of the way that the story was written originally. Thomas Harris's novel was very, very popular, but at the same time, it didn't work. It didn't work for me. I mean, I really have kind of stayed away from most of the spoilers, but I will say that the ending of the movie is very different to the ending in the book. Now, I read the book when it first came out, and I didn't really remember it, so I had to give myself a refresher. But in the book, Starling actually, partakes in Krendler's brain, and shortly after, Hannibal and Starling become lovers and travel the world. And I'm like, man, that's very different. In fact, Ridley Scott said, I couldn't take that quantum leap emotionally on behalf of Starling. Certainly on behalf of Hannibal. I'm sure that that's been in the back of his mind for a number of years. But for Starling, no. I think one of the attractions about Starling to Hannibal is what a straight arrow she is. Now, that's one of those situations where I feel like Ridley Scott was bang on with that. I don't think the Starling that we saw in Silence of the Lambs would have done that sort of thing. It doesn't make sense to me. As I said earlier, and it's obvious, right? And we're talking about Ridley Scott, not Jonathan Demme. He refused to come back to the movie because he found that the book was too gory and that he didn't think he could make another movie as good as Silence of the Lambs. I mean, that's a good reason not to come back if you don't feel like you have it in you to make a movie as good as that one. But Jodie Foster also declined to come back. She said, I had been offered more money than ever in my entire career to make this film. but who cares if it betrays Clarice, who has become like a person to me in the end. I also suspect that there were many different screenplays written for this, and I don't think they could ever get to a point where Clarice was anything more than a side character. And that's inevitably becomes the movie's biggest issue. In an interview that Anthony Hopkins did in 2016 with The Wrap, he also said that he actually regrets doing this movie and the following movie, Red Dragon, feeling that he should have limited his performance to that original one in Silence of the Lambs, which he called a good film, which, I mean, it is a really, really good film. And I can't really blame him, especially thinking back and looking back at these movies. Yeah, they just don't match that original. Now, the actual 4K, this is a Kino Lorber Studio Classic on their label there. And I have to say, it's my first one, and it's actually a really, really nice packaged stuff. There's so much on these discs. The 4K, of course, is beautiful looking. It really, really looks nice. I don't think it's HDR graded or anything like that, but it does look great. And of course, it has the audio commentary with Ridley Scott. And on the Blu-ray, which is region free, which is really, really nice. It does have all of the rest of the supplements that you see listed on screen. Awesome stuff. And as far as a package, I really, really enjoyed it. And of course, an audio commentary with Ridley Scott is always welcome. So I'll ask you, what did you think of Hannibal? Did you like this movie, or are you kind of like me and you're like, doesn't really work for me? I mean, I kind of feel like it's like a 2.5 out of 4. It's very well made. I just don't like the story. I think that the story really falls short. But as far as Ridley goes, I mean, I think he did a fantastic job with what he was there to do. I just don't think that the story works. But yeah, what do you think? And let me know down below, and we'll talk about it. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.